Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to other people. I'm very happy that we are doing this wonderful topic, and it is all about data privacy, digitalization, and how it impacts our profession as a company secretary. I have a wonderful question that I always like to ask my new students, and I always ask them, do you think data privacy is important? And the most common example of the answer that I get is no. I'm just a regular person with an average life. I go to university, go to my work, do my grocery shopping. I spend time with my family. Who is interested in me? Who would be interested in me? You need to monitor bad people. You need to see what they are doing. Why would anybody be interested in me? So I asked them, okay, if your life is so regular, please share your email password with me. Please send me all your bank and credit card statements, your WhatsApp, and also the CCTV footage of your home. I would like to see what type of emails you are receiving. What type of spending do you do on your credit cards? What type of costly gifts do you give to your wife or husband? Also, I want to watch what type of books do you read when you are at home, or do you keep scrolling on your phone all the time? The moment I ask this question, everybody becomes very uncomfortable. So this discomfort that you feel is your privacy. Your privacy is your right. You have a right to secrecy of life. Your privacy is your dignity. So the important question now is privacy dead? We live in this world where we have so many types of gadgets and applications and websites. Everyone is watching everyone these days. So does really privacy exist? So this is the question that we are going to discuss, and how companies or organizations or governments or regulators or authorities, how do we keep a tab that this right to secrecy, this right of your dignity to privacy is all maintained through proper laws? So to begin with, I would like to welcome our speakers. So first of all, I would like to start with our council member, CS Dwarkanath Ji, and he is the council member of ICSI. We also have our other speaker, Mr. Lance Yung from Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation in Hong Kong. We also have CS Priya Mahajan, who is the head of APAC Public Policy and Regulatory Council in Verizon in Singapore. And Ms. Fiona Chan, who is a Senior Compliance Manager in Rabobank in Australia. So welcome all the speakers. I would like to invite CS Dwarkanath Ji for his opening remarks. So Dwarkanath Ji is a Bachelor of Commerce graduate, as well as a law graduate, fellow member of our institute, ICSI. He's also an insolvency professional, social impact assessor, and also has a diploma in arbitration awarded by the ICSI. He is currently the Central Council member of ICSI, elected from the state of Karnataka to the ICSI for the term 2023 to 27. He was also the chairman of the Bangalore chapter for the year 2008, when Bangalore chapter won the best chapter under A grade category during his chairmanship. He has also been elected to Southern India Regional Council of the ICSI for the term 2011 to 2014. He was also the chairman of the SIRC of ICSI in the year 2013. He was a member of Secretarial Standards Boards of ICSI for the year 2019 and 2020. During the year 2023 to 24, he was the chairman of Peer Review Board of ICSI and currently the chairman of Practicing Company Secretaries Committee. Welcome to Dwarkanath Ji. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am delighted to be here today at this esteemed international webinar on digital governance, Pathway to Sustainable Future, which is being organized by ICSI. Before we delve into the intricacies of digital governance, I would like to briefly highlight some of the ICSI's recent global engagements and initiatives. ICSI has a strong global footprint with overseas centers in Australia, Canada, Singapore, UK, USA, and UAE. Two of these centers, that is UAE and Australia, hold a legal entity status, reflecting ICSI's commitment to international standards and professional development. Recently, ICSI served as a jury for the prestigious 2024 ICGN Achievement Awards, solidifying our position as a global authority in corporate governance. ICSI actively fosters international collaborations. At our recent Middle East conference in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we engaged with esteemed organizations like ADX and KEZAD, establishing valuable connections with the Security Authority. At the conference, ADGM Registration Authority emphasized ADGM's commitment to sustainable practices and long-term value creation, inviting ICSI and CS professionals to align with this vision. Looking forward, ICSI will be actively participating in the OECD Asia Roundtable on Corporate Governance in Manali, Philippines tomorrow, with our president as key speaker. This signifies our commitment to actively shaping the global discourse on good governance. Further, ICSI actively engages with the leading global organizations. We recently partnered with the Institute of Directors of its IOD, London Global Convention 2024, with Vice President as a speaker, key speaker in a session on board leadership and strategy. ICSI is proud to announce our upcoming 4th International Conference, which is going to be held on 3rd, 4th, and 5th September 2025, to be held in Sydney, Australia. This, I feel, is a significant event, will provide a valuable platform for the company secretaries, professionals to explore new avenues in governance and sustainability. I am also delighted to share that our President CSB Narasimhan has been unanimously elected as the Secretary of the Council of Corporate Secretaries International Association, which is called CSIA, for the year 2025, underscoring the growing stature of Indian company secretaries on global footage. Furthermore, ICSI actively participate in international forums to enhance knowledge sharing and collaboration with the global company secretary community. I believe these global engagements and initiatives demonstrate ICSI's commitment to advancing good corporate governance practices, fostering international collaboration, and empowering company secretaries to navigate the challenges and opportunities of a rapidly growing global landscape. Further, the Institute of Company Secretaries of India offers diverse educational programs, including crash courses, PMQ courses, and certificate courses, all accessible through its digital learning management system. Coming to the subject, that is today's topic, overview on digital governance and sustainability. Digital governance, of course, and sustainability futures are interconnected concepts that focus on leveraging technology and digital transformation to promote sustainable development, environmental protection, and equitable social progress. As far as key aspects of digital governance are concerned, briefly, I wish to say one is e-governance, wherein utilize digital technologies to enhance government transparency, accountability, and citizen participation, leading to more effective policy making and public service delivery. Digital infrastructure develops and maintains robust, secure, and inclusive digital infrastructure to support sustainable development, such as high-speed internet, data centers, and cloud computing. The third one is data-driven decision making. Employs data analysis and artificial intelligence to inform policy decisions, monitor progress, and optimize resources allocation for sustainable outcomes. Then fourth one is digital literacy and inclusion. Fosters digital literacy and ensures equal access to digital technologies, bridging the digital divide and promoting social equity. As far as the challenges and opportunities are concerned, I just wish to touch upon the digital divide, addressing equal access to digital technologies and ensuring inclusivity, data privacy and security, protecting sensitive information and preventing cyber threats, then technology obsolescence, managing an environmental impact of rapidly evolving digital technologies, and policy and regulatory frameworks, which are must developing and harmonizing policies to support digital governance and sustainability. So as far as opportunities are concerned for the professionals, one briefly I will touch on innovative solutions, international cooperation, citizen engagement, then green ICT, promoting environmental sustainable information and communication technologies. With this brief opening remarks, I would like to express sincere gratitude to our esteemed speakers today, Mr. Lance Ng, CS Priya Mahajan, CS Pooja Shukla, and Ms. Poyana Chan. Their insights, I strongly believe, from diversified fields and their unique perspectives from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia will undoubtedly enrich our understanding of digital governance in the pursuit of sustainable future. With this, I thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nadji. So I would like to give a bit more elaborate introduction of all the speakers, starting with myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Pooja. I'm a lawyer, corporate governance professional, and company secretary holding memberships of 3 institutes internationally, that is India, UK, and Hong Kong. I have served as a board secretary to various other boards and committees in various listed companies, banks, multinational companies internationally, which operated in manufacturing, IT, mining, infrastructure, professional services, law firms, and telecom businesses. Currently, I teach law and corporate governance in Hong Kong Metropolitan University in Hong Kong. So we have our first speaker, Mr. Lance Ng, who is the Assistant Director, AI and Data in Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation in Hong Kong. Mr. Lance Ng is a seasoned data and AI governance professional with certifications in project management, Lean Six Sigma, agile methodologies, data management, data privacy, and machine learning. He has over 15 years of experience specializing in data governance management across various sectors, including finance, technology, logistics, manufacturing. At Central Bank and Stock Exchange, he successfully implemented the comprehensive data governance programs and solutions, enhancing data quality and operational efficiency by developing data strategies, establishing governance frameworks, and defining data policies and standards. Our second speaker is CS Priya Mahajan. She's the head of APAC Public Policy and Regulatory Council in Verizon in Singapore. She is the, so basically she is leading the regulatory and policy support of the business. She works closely with the internal stakeholders to identify and develop company-wide policy positions for coordinated advocacy strategy aligned with Verizone's global policy approach. She works with regulators, policymakers, and trade associations on a range of technology policy issues to deliver sustainable business outcomes. Outside of her role at Verizon, she also holds leadership positions at the trade associations. a qualified attorney and company secretary. She holds multiple professional certifications, including Accelerated General Management Program certification by the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, and Certified Information Privacy Professional Asia, that is CIPPA and APP. And we have our third speaker, Ms. Fiona Chan. She's the Senior Compliance Manager in Rabobank, Australia. Fiona leads the Privacy Risk Office of Rabobank, Australia and New Zealand, where they oversee the data protection strategy and privacy risk management across the region. She's a qualified Australian lawyer. She holds certifications from the International Association of Privacy Professionals. With over 8 years of experience in this field, she has operationalized local and global privacy laws in diverse industries, both regulated and unregulated. Her career includes pivotal roles at major Australian financial services and in Belgium, where they had helped international international businesses to manage the GDPR compliance. Her expertise spans data protection, AI governance, and privacy risk. So I welcome you, Fiona, Lance, and Priya. Thank you for joining us. And I'm just looking forward to have a wonderful discussion. And so please feel free to share your, experiences that you have, observed while on the job, not just coming from your qualifications. So let's start with you, Lance. Please share your experiences. What do you think, how the world is changing?
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone and friends. Yeah, it's both an honor and also a privilege to be invited by ICSI to speak with you today. Yeah, we're talking about the topic of digital governance as a pathway to a sustainable future. It's very interesting because it covers a broad domain as well. Yeah, so maybe a little bit of introduction of my organization as well. So Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, in short, is HKSTP. So we are the largest incubator or innovation hub. So we can say we are like Hong Kong Silicon Valley. Sorry. Sorry, somehow the room didn't detect my temperature. Yeah. We are the Silicon Valley in Hong Kong, and we are a home for over 2,000 startup and also park companies. So our focus is our company's focus are primarily based on is on AI, digital health, robotics. Yeah, we cover a range of research and development, and our vision is to transform Hong Kong into a international innovation hub, and it is also in line with our city's strategic goal and also our country's mainland China's goal as well. So to achieve this, so we commit to drive innovation, foster technology adoption, and also empower industry to tackle any challenges today or tomorrow, so which including governance challenge, privacy risk, security risk. There's a lot of things that we actually trying to support the economies. But so as a part of this vision, so my role basically is to facilitate the strategic planning of Hong Kong's data or AI ecosystem. So we are one of the key players in Hong Kong. So we will develop we'll educate the market. We will provide a governance framework for the corporates to learn or to follow. We develop partnership, investment, cross-border or cross-industry data exchange as well. There's a range of things that we do. So for today's topics, since it's related to the governance, so I guess my focus will more focus on the digital, the governance area. But since my background is more on the data, so I don't just particularly talk about the privacy risk or the privacy related governance, but data governance in general. So I hope it's okay. Yeah. So when we talk about when I look at today's topic, I think one key point that highlights to me is the word sustainability, sustainable. Yeah, because if anything that's not sustainable, actually it will fail. It will ultimately fail. And for us, yes, in terms of governance, there's a lot of area that we have to consider. people, process, and technology all are included. And for when a lot of time when people ask me like what's data governance, actually it cover area from the data storage to machine learning. There's a lot, but for me that's we definitely have a lot of like knowledge domain that we have to spend times on. But for me, the most important thing is the data literacy. Yeah, I hope you or you can call it like data culture as well. Yeah, I hope you also learn about like one of the famous quotes, like the culture is strategy for breakfast. Yeah, I think this is also true for data governance or digital governance. So without a strong data culture, I think even the most sophisticated like strategy or a framework or even technology may fail. So when we talk about data literacy, so what I'm perhaps like not everyone knows about it. So for me, like data literacy is not just technical. It's more about like using data as a language. So it involves the ability to read the data, how to work with the data, like how to analyze data, and I think most importantly is how we can argue with the data, and that's quite important. I can quote from one example from a book. I'm not sure I should mention any corporate names here. So, but one of our partner is Booking.com. So I think we talked to one of the executive, and so I think a lot of strategy that in Hong Kong or even in the world, a lot of the strategy actually is top down, right? But from Booking.com, I think the executive, remember he told me that if you can show me that the things that you are or the things that you suggest or your counter proposal can be proven by data, he will take it because they think that data is the real boss of the organization, not himself. So data is a key, and how we protect the data and how we use the data or how we can monetize the data is also key. So in Hong Kong, especially for us, we in Hong Kong is very complicated. So not only we actually is a super connector between mainland China and also to the overseas, and also we being exposed to like different type of requirement or different like the compliance related like exposure, and also different kind of even for political reason as well. So it's very complicated to do business in Hong Kong, but however, we can consider it as an advantage. Yeah, so we believe that if we can promote like data literacy in Hong Kong, then actually it's like our competitive edge. Yeah, among like different economies, perhaps including Singapore and also Australia as well. Yeah, so in order to have a good like data literacy, or we can call it like data literate organization, so we need to have a very good like data leadership in our C-level. So for us, we also will conduct training with of course, with some of our service providers together as well, to conduct some training to allow our corporate executive to learn about how to drive data in literacy or drive data culture within organization. And for us, but based on our experience, we observe that the high performing organization actually demonstrate, I would say, like three like key indicator. Yeah, if they have a very strong data culture. The first is that data leadership in the C-suite. So at least in the C-suite, there must be like one or two, of course, definitely as many as possible, some data champions in the C-suite. So if you in your C-level, if you don't see anyone who is the data leader, that could be a problem. Yeah, so this is something that we observe. Another thing is that another observational indicator that we observe is that the high performance organization, they will allow the data to flow within the organization as well. So it means that and empower people to use the data. So the data can be accessible within organization. This is our second indicator. And the third indicator that we see is that they have a culture to test, to try. So they have a culture to do the rapid testing or doing experience with data. So for us, since Hong Kong, we stand as the threshold of becoming a global smart city. So we actually conduct a lot of training to make sure to enable our organization to have about three different indicator or behavior. So culture is important, but however, it is not enough. Yeah, because although we can have the whole organization to even talk about the data to use the data. However, we still need to turn things into action. So that's why the data strategy will come in. So when we turn into the data strategy, we believe that the data strategy is a key change enabler. So since as I mentioned, that Hong Kong position as a superconnector between China and also the overseas, it gives us a unique opportunities in the data innovation. Yeah, and especially when it comes to the value of data. So and also right now, when we talk about the data, we don't just use our own data. So we also we see that the organization or their products or the products that doing the best actually use a lot of data from alternative data source. Yeah, even with the AI right now. So you can see that because I assume that a lot of you has used ChatGPT or even other large language models. You can they actually use a lot of data. So a lot of them currently in the common data large language model, they are using just open data. We are not even talking about the data with high restricted data or data with high confidentiality requirement. So actually, you already see the change. Actually, it's changed a lot already, and so it means that not only you have to, in order to realize the value of the data, you cannot just use your own data. You have to use other people's data, and at the same time, you might need to share the data as well. And that will, if in order, this is the key to really realize the value. But however, if we share the data, if we trying to obtain as much data as possible from the market or from the people, then it creates a lot of risk. So security risk, definitely. So I think we can all agree that security risk is become more important every day. Yeah, I think if I'm not wrong, yeah, in US, I think the stock price for those companies who do cyber security insurance actually skyrocketed this couple of years. Yeah, I think cybersecurity is one thing. Another thing is I would say is definitely the privacy risk. Yeah, because when we try to obtain as much data as possible to either to build a model or to allow the whole organization to make use of data, not everyone will be able to handle the data privacy or security or any compliance risk consistently. Yeah. So even you have everyone talk with the data, you still need some way to allow the company to manage data consistently. I think this is also perhaps one of the key the key topics of today's. Yeah. So I think this and another thing is perhaps a little bit distant is actually is related to intellectual property related protection. Yeah, but for us because it is we mostly focus on R&D and AI. So IP for us is this topic is very very important, and especially when we talk about not just about sharing the data between a individual to a company, where we talk about the B2B data sharing as well, yeah, and also B2G sharing. So in order to do so, that we need to really have an agreed or governance approach to manage the data. Otherwise, I wouldn't trust you to share the data with you. Some of the observation that we see in some of the data strategy in Hong Kong, and also the part of the things that we are working on. Maybe I can I can share you more some of the project we work on. So one of the things that we work on is related to interoperability of the data. So what it means is that to ensure the data can smoothly flow between like different organizations, like what I said, like B2B or B2G. For us, we actually in Hong Kong, especially because like finance and banking is very our bones, actually is within our bones. So for us, for Hong Kong, and actually for my team as well, we actually supported the central bank to trying to standardize the data across like 20x banks in Hong Kong to streamline their financial services. In order to this project is called Interbank Data Sharing Initiative. So what it does is that we're trying to help the banks to standardize their data so that between each bank they can easily move the data. So right now, I think nowadays when maybe if you're also very familiar with banking as well, when we open a bank account, perhaps you are request to provide your other bank statement as well. But in Hong Kong, it's same thing. But if we provide like other banks like information, is actually in the paper format. So the data currently doesn't really flow between different banks. And even I receive the data, actually I cannot understand the data as well. So data standardization become a very key if we want to like smoothen the let's say the bank the account opening process. This is a key. Also in Hong Kong, at least what I know is Hong Kong only. So we don't have let's say if I have like bank account for like 20x banks in Hong Kong, but I don't have a consolidated bank statement. So I will receive 28 bank statement. So in order to, because the data between different banks, they don't share with each other easily. And even with the consent from the customer, they still don't share the data, or their data, when they combine together, they cannot be comprehend. So these are the problem that we learn about it. So and we see that interoperability is a key to make the data flow in Hong Kong, at least for the banking area at the beginning. So another things that we have observed is that the rise of the data trust. I am not sure if you have learned about like data trust. So and also data cooperative is like a company or organization that help their client to manage the data. I think you learn about like some of the credit reference agency like TransUnion. They will try to protect your data, help you to manage your data, your personal data. Of course, also to the data will be provided to the bank to learn, so that the banks can learn about your credit score or something like that. And I think we see this trend is trying to start to grow up, so that some of the other different kind of data trust are created, including like different area. I think in India, maybe insurance is something that they can look at. In let's say in UK, Biobank is one of the, like I would say, the data trust organization that like hosting the patient's medical data. And this kind of trend we see because with this kind of like intermediary like organization, we see there's an increasing number of this organization, because not every organization they can manage their data consistently. So this kind of organization kind of like they start to surface and try to support other organizations. When we deal with the data sharing, they can do it in a consistent or in a compliance rate. Another observation that we see from Hong Kong Science Park standpoint is the privacy enhanced technology. Privacy enhanced technology is also an area, I think, like perhaps a lot of country or a lot of economies they're trying to explore. And for us in Hong Kong, actually, but it's not really well established. One of the reasons why, because it's not actually related to, of course, it's a technology, and it takes time to understand and adopt. But the thing is that the privacy enhancing technology, it could create some costs when it comes to data sharing. It's not just talking about like sharing between organizations. It talk about the sharing between like the company and the individual as well, and that's a cost. So that's and we start to see that some of the organization and some of the startup, they try to utilize this strategy and try to make it like trying to lower down the price. So in order for organization to share the data between another organization, and when we talk about like privacy enhancing technology, that's, for example, differential privacy, perhaps the federated learning or the multi-party computation. These are all the examples. Yeah. So basically, I think this is just my 2 cents. Yeah. I think for Hong Kong science and technology part, we actually public sector. So we are very interested to explore any data collaboration opportunity between like different industry, and also we believe that for us, Hong Kong, because Hong Kong actually we do not have a lot of data. But however, we can be a super connector or be a data hub to connect not just between like China to the overseas, but actually facilitate for any for every countries. Especially in the APAC area. So I think this is my 2 cents. Yeah.
Thank you, Lance. You mentioned about the banking data operability. Anything that makes KYC easier is always good. All of us suffer so much from that, whichever sector, keep aside sector, even if you are a housewife, just to get your KYC done. I have never seen any example in my life when someone went to the bank and they got their bank account operated in one day. I do not know even one instance. You have to do multiple trips. So whatever you said is a very good news to me personally. I would be very happy. I don't know about other people, but I'm going to be a beneficiary of that.
Yeah. I actually want to at one point is that actually in right now we work with a lot of credit. I talk about data trust, right? Yeah, I think the reason why we use that those credit reference agencies is because we trust them, and they are licensed to do so as well, right? So I think trust is also an important key point. When we use the data of an individual, for example, or just, let's say it's employees' data or your staff's data to do some analysis, how do you communicate the trust to them? Yeah, I think this kind of transparency is very important. I assume our later part of our discussion will cover this as well. Yeah.
Also, I'm very glad that finally your light system has finally recognized you as a human being. So it's back. It is very interesting that we have to prove to AI that we are humans. That's the paradox. You also mentioned about data being the boss and not the senior management. Students, whoever is listening, write that in your examination and impress your examiner. You also mentioned about ChatGPT, and at the university, initially we were kind of very, hesitant that we should allow the students to use ChatGPT or not. But, whether we allow that or not, we knew with the students, we tell the students or not, that definitely everyone is going to use that. So, in fact, sometimes I feel very jealous that during our times, we didn't have these options, assignment, all of these would be so easy and so top notch. So at the university, we decided at the management level that we are going to embrace ChatGPT. And in fact, we now have offered our own version, university version of ChatGPT to the students. So I think this is one of the greatest examples now that we cannot do away with the newer data or AI requirements. We have to embrace that at any levels. Of course, ethics, integrity is a separate part. So we just ask the students to declare in what type of situation, whether it is just for grammar or for generating ideas, how they have used ChatGPT. So I think embracing the new developments of internet and AI is very important. Okay, so let's move to Priya. So Priya, please share your experiences and enlighten our students and other members.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pooja. And it's really a pleasure to be here today and sharing some of my thoughts. Just for I know that Pooja has given us a very generous introduction, but maybe I'll take a second here to, focus on the perspective that I bring to the table. So I am head of public policy for Verizon. So in my role, I will work a lot with policymakers and regulators in the region. Particularly, the focus areas for us are policy areas around cybersecurity, data privacy, and as most of you who are following Asia Pacific as a region, from a privacy perspective, there's a lot happening. There's a lot of action. Policymakers across the region are currently either enacting a new data privacy law or brushing up their existing law. So, of those of us who are in the policy space or a regulatory space or a compliance space, all of us have been very busy last year, and next year again is going to be super busy for all of us. I can assure you, because there would be many more changes happening on the horizon. So the lens from where I am coming from is more from a policy perspective. What are the developments we are seeing? How does that impact businesses in the region and globally? And what can we do about it? And how can we all collaborate? I think the broader theme of this session is about cooperation, and how do we share best practices across the group for the broader community and arrive towards a more sustainable outcome from a policy perspective. So let me begin my remarks by stating a few things about the organization that I am working for. So I work for Verizon. This is, for those of you who don't know what Verizon is, we are a global technology company providing telecom solutions and connectivity to customers across the globe. What is unique about our international presence is that we do not provide consumer services. We are essentially in the enterprise space, B2B space. So typically a Fortune 500 company would have connectivity requirements, and we kind of are their provider of choice for them. So as a global provider, we have customers all across the globe, and we have, our assets and stuff like that. And what we really provide is technology solutions, networking, advanced communication, security solutions, and so on and so forth. So for any global company which is in the connectivity business, and for that matter, any business, data flows are really important. And that is what is going to be the heart of my initial remarks, because we are seeing a lot of policymakers in this region. They are continuing to advance policies of protectionism. We are concerned about it, and especially blocking the data transfers and mandating localization requirements. And these restrictive policies, in my own personal view, could have a consequential impact not only on the big businesses, but also small and medium businesses. And the reason I say that, because the big businesses do have sophisticated and matured privacy teams to look into it. But I think for small and medium businesses, this is more of a additional cost of compliance and administrative burden on them. So increasingly, what we are seeing is that for small businesses, it is getting very difficult to navigate through different privacy regimes that are emerging, or existing data privacy laws that are being brushed up. So I think that's one potential area that I'd like to kind of flag and call out. In the context of data flows and protectionism, I'd like to probably talk about two concepts here for your consideration. One is the concept of digital sovereignty, and the other one is data flows. Okay, so let me give you some context there. So in the context of digital sovereignty, we've seen COVID-19, there was a lot of focus on digitalization. And overnight, companies moved on to virtual. There was a lot of digital transformation projects on board to kind of quickly ramp up the operations. What it has in further triggered is the fact that the governments are now also making sure that there's a strategic autonomy across the sector, because we got to know the interconnected nature of the society, the digital economy. And so to deal with such kind of a, God forbid, natural disaster or something like that in the future, governments are planning and launching a variety of strategies and measures to ensure they are autonomous, right? It could be increased public investment in strategic sectors. It could be new regulation. It could be new state aid to promote companies. With that, we also see some requirements to store data locally, or investment screening or export control restrictions. And the reason for this is that, typically the governments think that the digital sector needs to be sovereign and is the primary focus of the government. So those of us in the digital space would have seen heightened activity around this. And for companies that are either global or regional, they're also increasingly concerned about this whole proposition around digital sovereignty, which could evolve into protectionism. Some countries could evolve into using sovereignty to introduce protectionist measures, for example, censorship. An additional measure of an element of consideration that we see emerging is the local originating businesses often welcome these kind of protectionist measures, because it may benefit them financially. So all in all, even though those measures the intent for those measures may be more about sovereignty, but I think it does impact not only the large businesses, but also small, medium, and everybody in between. So these requirements do have potential impacts on the businesses, on the community, and the customers. And so the ability to compete with local businesses on equal terms is again a big challenge. And these protectionist measures again can lead to increasing cost for the businesses. For example, cost associated with data localization, vendor lock-ins, and all of this would ultimately reduce the innovation and the technology capabilities and capacities. So what do we kind of do about it? We know the problem. We know that this is a trend that is emerging. I think one of the things that we need to do is promote greater regulatory cooperation amongst governments, in particular on cross-border data flows and data standards. That's something which is really important as businesses, as a community. We should promote this messaging about greater regulatory cooperation. We also need to ensure that the data transfers take place under robust security frameworks. And the argument is that not where the data is stored, but how it is protected and governed by really high standards of privacy and security. So that's the narrative that we need to kind of bring to the table. The second part of my remarks is about data flows. This is an important area. Now, similar to digital sovereignty, I think data flows has suddenly becoming a very important topic. And as I mentioned initially, policymakers in this region are currently looking at, how they can impose localization requirements or restrict data flows. Again, this could either be legal requirements in the privacy law. It could be transfers which could be allowed only under stringent conditions, right? So again, this would have concerns, and there is a commitment on the parts of the governments to target a growing range of data types, for example, health data, financial data. And despite these concerns, there's also renewed focus on how they can promote the businesses. So there's that balancing act that the governments need to kind of make there. If I call out a few examples from the region, we are seeing that, for example, in India, RBI had mandated that the payment systems data would be stored locally in India. So that's one of the examples where policymakers went on to mandate something like a data localization requirements. And of course, there are reasons for that, why the policymakers are taking that approach. But I think the point that we are trying to emphasize here, that such approaches always have a restricted and destabilizing impact ultimately on the businesses and the economy. The global nature of economy means that all the entities in the ecosystem, they heavily rely on data flows. So I think the government policies that mandate localization or anything are impacting businesses and increasing the operational cost for them. And I think the messaging that we as a group, as a community and industry, need to leave with the policymakers is that digital networks, they are at the heart of the interconnected economy, and we should not be disturbing this long-standing practice and presumption that data can move seamlessly and responsibility should be allowed. And any rules that relating to data transfers should not be modified, or any protectionist measures should not be imposed to ensure that we are able to leverage the full full ambit and benefits from data flows. And also, last but not the least, the government should work towards legal frameworks. We have several legal frameworks that support cross-border data flows. We have adequacy requirements coming in countries. We have also mechanisms that are already approved under data transfer mechanisms like BCRs and standard contractual clauses and so on and so forth. So I think one of the previous speaker mentioned about interoperability, and I totally want to kind of catch up on that in the context of data transfers, that we need to have an interoperable framework and standardization around how we can transfer data across borders, particularly in the context of the Asia Pacific region. There are so many different markets and so many different requirements around privacy, and I think for everybody who's kind of impacted by those changes and amendments and policies, one thing that we definitely have been promoting and encouraging is interoperability, because in the EU we have the GDPR and they talk about harmonization there, but we in the Asia Pacific region we are talking about very diverse regimes, and we talk about how we can make sure that these privacy regimes talk to each other, in the sense that it doesn't make it very heavy lifting for the large, small, and medium businesses. The next topic that again in my remarks about data flows and digital sovereignty, I've touched upon it, but broadly we see three trends, and I'm going to leave you with these three trends and how we see these trends emerging. One, we are seeing the first trend where the regulators are imposing mandates around data autonomy. So they want all of the data of the citizens to be stored in a physical server in the country, and there's several countries that are trying to do that. Of course, this has an impact on how the ability of the companies to move data transfers. The second, we are seeing selective sectors being targeted, for example, financial services, healthcare, government data, telecom data, and we have several examples across the globe and in the region. Particularly in Australia, we have an interesting example, because Australia has generally policies that facilitate the flow of information across borders, but Australia data transfer restrictions pertain to critical industries, essentially healthcare, which requires that you cannot send a personal electronic health information outside the national boundaries. Additionally, I do understand that Australia is considering rules around data storage and processing for critical sector and designated system of national significance under its SOCI Act, which is a distinct legislation around security of critical infrastructure. Lastly, we are seeing data mirroring requirements, which essentially means that while the policy allows data transfers, but the copy of the data has to be stored or mirrored onshore. But that makes it very onerous from a cost perspective, but also compliance perspective, forcing the businesses to localize. As an example, I said the RBI in India issued the storage directive on storage of payment systems data, requiring payment firms like a MasterCard or Visa to mirror data in India and ensure that the data that is processed abroad can be deleted in a definite timeline. So I think these policies have resulted in a lot of enforcement measures, which have been taken against some of the financial services providers, again, which increases the cost of compliance. Finally, I want to leave you guys with some good examples of and collaboration on cross-border data flows. So based on our experience working in these markets, we believe that there's some regulators and policymakers who are taking a pro-business approach. Singapore, Japan, policy and regulatory frameworks here allow international data transfers. In addition to their domestic policies, they're also parties to various bilateral and multilateral digital economy agreements, which has provisions to hold governments accountable for their commitment towards free data flows. Some of these countries, Australia, Singapore, and others, have concluded digital economy agreements, and these agreements have a number of market commitments to support data flows, and they contain suitable provisions around prohibition on cross-border data flows. So all in all, I'd say that while there are increasing concerns around data localization and digital sovereignty and increasing protectionist measures, but there are also a lot of pro-business approaches being evolved and introduced to make sure that the policy environments continues to promote innovation and investment in the markets. So with that, I'd probably give it back to you, Pooja.
Thank you, Priya. That was very, a lot of practical aspects, get missed when you are just learning about regulatory. So thank you for connecting these two. Okay, I would just like to remind the audience, if you have any question, please do not wait. Please type your question in the chat box, and we will try our best to answer all of your questions. Okay, so now over to you, Fiona. Please share your thoughts with us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for inviting me to speakers here. I've actually learned a lot just listening to Lance and Priya talk about their experiences. So thank you. I have so many questions, but we'll talk about that later. Again, a brief introduction of Rubberbank Group. We are a Dutch-owned bank and we operate globally. So we're a retail bank, an institutional bank in the Netherlands, but in Australia and New Zealand, or in other parts of the world that's not the Netherlands and Europe, we actually are more of an agricultural based. We lend to farmers. And so we basically have only a very small arm of retail-based customers there. And so my role in Rubberbank really is to really oversee that data protection strategy and privacy risk management across Australia and New Zealand. So most of my experience in this organization has been to really uplift the privacy capabilities, privacy risk management, really doing a lot of awareness training and uplifting the entire organization's ability to identify, assess, and mitigate that privacy risk. So my experience has mainly also been in implementing GDPR programs in Europe, but also in Australia and New Zealand, where in many organizations where they don't have very visible links to the EU, and so it's a hard message to be selling to get everyone on board to comply to GDPR. So that's a little bit about me. And today I'm going to talk about sort of my main three topics or observations. Is really there's a lot of different approaches to policy and legislation, like Priya has already talked about, and there's such a fragmented regulatory landscape, particularly in the APAC region, Asia Pacific region. And then we're also trying to look to the rest of the world and also to the European Union for the gold standard on privacy and data protection. So GDPR, we all know, the General Data Protection Regulation came into effect in 2018, May 25th. It was one of the biggest piece of comprehensive privacy regulation that really set the gold standard, and it continues to be. So whilst it is the gold standard, we're also seeing everyone else around the world trying to tackle data protection and establish legislative frameworks that are interoperable. So Priya talked about the data sharing and how we need more interoperability there. And Lance also talked about a bit on the banking side, which I'll actually go into a bit later. And so there's a lot of challenge, but there's also a lot of opportunity in this diversity of thought and approaches. So I recently attended a Women in Privacy webinar where we were also talking about, how important it was and how valuable it was to have many, many different distinct voices when we are designing strategies. Yet in an Australian context, and because just a bit of background, and Priya already touched on it, is that we're going through massive reform right now. We're looking at our Privacy Act and we're looking to really harmonize it and trying to also get the best of everyone else's legislative frameworks and trying to incorporate that. But as much as we're trying to look outwards and look at all the different approaches, I've found actually in the review and the consultation period, a lot of the desktop or literature review that the government has conducted in order to come up with this new Harmonized Privacy Act is predominantly drawn from the UK Data Protection Act's experiences and anything that the European Data Protection Board has published in English. So like we're drawing a lot of those experiences and a lot of that data as well from to me as a very small population, because there's actually a lot of other regulators in Europe and also in the Asia Pac region that don't publish a lot of their experiences and their learnings and their approaches in English. So it's not accessible to our own lawmakers. And when we, have all these policy discussions, it's very hard to go. I think we get quite tunnel vision and focused on, okay, if the UK did it that way, then we should also do it that way. But then it's like, well, that's sample size of one. So that's where I think whilst there is value in diversity of thought and approaches in the Australian context and maybe also in the New Zealand context, we're not drawing from our neighbours. We're not drawing from anywhere else except the UK or anything that's available in English. So that's probably one of the key things that I've seen when we talk about sort of diversity of thought and the approach. And while I'm supposed to talk about the challenges of those different regimes and the inconsistent application across the industries or even in companies, I actually find not one approach in legal decision making or in business implementation is the best. I think we need to definitely recognize that we can take different paths and different roads, and there is all still compatible with the end goal of data protection. So like in my time implementing GDPR in many organizations, I've seen sort of these different approaches, and I'm sure Lance also sees it, and Priya, like when you talk to your business stakeholders and also the many businesses that Lance your organization helps, is that they're all when they're led by different departments, you kind of get different results. So like if it's an information security led approach, usually with the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer in charge, or the CTO in charge, you're going to get a more security focused one when it comes to data privacy and data protection. And in organizations where that sort of data protection is led by a legal compliance function, you'll see it becomes very literal. It's very, very dogmatic, I find, and there's not a lot of room for that business pragmatism, because, lawyers and a bunch of compliance people in a room are like, well, the law says this, so you've got to do this, right? So, but then that in many ways will impede innovation and also any business priorities. So, and then furthermore, if it's a data governance-led approach, again, Lance, from your side, I found that it's actually highly technical, and as you've spoken before, there's not a lot of data literacy. So when there's no data literacy, you can't really have that data governance-led approach. It's kind of more you're dragging people along. So, and I've seen that in many multiple organizations that I've sort of been assisting and supporting. So I think, it's not one size fits all, and we've had to really recognize the linkages between all these different areas, technology, data, security, legal, and compliance. And you've really got to start planning for that quite early on. So first you recognize that basically there are linkages there, and there's also dependencies, but then you also need to start planning for them to come back all in together to form that data protection picture, when the time comes. So yeah, it's just I'm in the business of risk management. So between these areas, I actually see a lot of the same processes that are being developed, but all just looking at things from a little bit of a different angle, different perspective. And so why can't really we be leveraging all of that? Why can't we build it in a modular fashion? So sometimes I think with data governance, personal data is really just another type of data, right? So it still needs to be under governance, and we need to use that responsibly, right? Personal data, and that's how we're going to achieve data privacy. So that's probably my second point there is like how the different approaches and how we can actually bring it all back together, and they can all actually coexist, not one size fits all. There is diversity. And look at, in saying that, while we're borrowing and learning from others, and there's all these different approaches to how we tackle data protection, what I'm also seeing in Australia from a regulatory landscape is that we're trying to make moves and be distinct in this area. And this is something that, Lance, you sort of touched on before with the interbank sharing. And we have our version of that, which is open banking, and trying to really empower that data portability and that data sharing, concepts and practices that we've seen in Europe take shape. And so and we've been constantly watching them in order to implement what we have is, consumer data rights, our version of it. But we, going back to why, like in the Australian landscape, we're trying to make an impact. We're kind of going in a different direction as the open banking that has happened in Europe. And I think just hearing from what Lance has talked about in Hong Kong, I think it's actually a very similar type. It's more compliance-driven, regulatory led, because in Australia it's just we've mandated that all banks need to meet this data standard and then build this ability to share the data with all the different banks, but the distinction also is that our consumer data rights scheme is it's supposed to be sectoral agnostic. We're starting with banking as the first sector, and then we're moving on to energy and telecommunications, just to go back to Priya's interoperability and data sharing. So that I think we've tried to be very ambitious in trying to legislate for this big overarching data sharing framework, let's say, and it's been led by really just legislation, and it's led by multiple different government agencies rather than one central agency or one regulator. And my main observation on that is really why we've built something now that's really more form over substance. We looked to Europe, where it was a lot of functionality as the key focus, and for some reason we've gone with data sharing as our key focus. And so I think with the technical build that was happening, that was informed by again, a government-led or public sector organization, and then on the legislative side, we've created another privacy framework, which actually called the privacy safeguards, which is, again, slightly different, but yet has overlapping elements that worked alongside, but also in conjunction with our Privacy Act. So it actually caused, I think, a lot of the problems that we see now. And with the review that they recently did on sort of how effective was the consumer data rights first build in the banking industry, that's just really led to that they were saying $1.5 billion was invested in this scheme since 2018, and that's just only by the banking industry alone. Like we haven't even, well, we have calculated the cost to the government on it, but I mean, $1.5 billion just from the private sector. And right now, the results are saying that basically less than 1% of Australians are using this. So, have we done right by the Australian people by sort of leading this, making it a government-led initiative rather than a market-driven initiative? In Europe with their open banking scheme, that was more about competition, faster payments, and so it wasn't build and then people will come. It was build what people wanted, build what people needed, and build what they can use. And so that's why there was such fast adoption, and in the UK instance, we're talking about 60% adoption, I think, within like the first 3 years. Whereas you look at us since 2018, less than 1% of Australians have used it. And I think that's a poor outcome. And it's a poor use of money and funds for investment. And it's actually placed a lot of compliance burdens on much smaller organizations because much smaller banks, sorry, have to make the decision between complying with CDR or investing in other things, could be like, modernizing their technology. So that's probably the second observation that I've had, is that government-led initiative or regulatory-driven compliance in such a way is probably not as effective as they'd like to think it is. And, it sort of hampers a bit of innovation and speed. And finally, as Priya has mentioned, that we are going through a lot of privacy uplift, and we're doing the harmonization with our Privacy Act, and we're seeing this in Australia, but also soon in New Zealand. We have a very active regulator on that side. I think the new emerging risk, as I like to call it, and for the companies, is really to look at the data retention and disposal. So rather than data protection or data privacy, because we've come on this journey where we spend a lot of time and effort putting guardrails around how people use our personal data, and what you can do with it and what you cannot do with it. We have what I would say the organizational measures, which are your behavioral controls. You're basically educating, training the people on how to training your employees, sorry, on how to use that personal data responsibly, and also how to protect it. And then there are the technical measures, which is your information security controls. So now we need to examine the data we have, because hackers, or internal or external, are also eyeing the data that we have. Right? You have a strong perimeter, you have a strong barrier so that they can't get in. But also, once they're in, we're going to limit what is available for them to take. So that is probably the new, well, at least that's the focus for a lot of Australian organizations right now, due to the very high profile data breaches that we've had in the past couple of years, and so particularly also because we see in Australia, a lot of our major data breaches are more to do with social engineering, phishing attacks rather than cyber attacks, rather than brute force, really trying to get into our systems. So the key element is always going back to the human, right? So while we've taught the humans how to responsibly use and protect the data, we also need to examine and re-examine how the human has collected and retained that data prior to all of this awareness and all this uplift that we're doing. And then we need to dispose of the data because we're just like one bad link away from compromising the whole organization's data. So I think that's probably my three main points there on what sort of my observations as being in the business and helping other businesses sort of navigate compliance with all the different privacy legislation.
Thank you, Fiona. You mentioned about data literacy. I think all of you guys mentioned about data literacy. And as a governance professional, in fact, I would like to share that most of the directors who are involved in the strategy, in all types of decision making, even they lack this level of literacy. So the most common, excuse that they have is, I don't know anything about it. I cannot give my opinion about this. So I always think like, sorry, but you have your director's duties. You cannot escape this just saying, I don't know about it. Because if anything goes wrong at law, you are responsible. You have to explain why you did not get a chance to educate yourself. Why did you not attend webinars like these? What were you doing when there was a new regulation and it was applicable on your company, to your company, your industry? Or even if it is remotely affecting your competitors, you need to be aware how, from the risk management perspective, you need to be aware how this might potentially impact you. And these days, the slightest thing, like you said, you are just one link away from losing everything. So I think ignorance is not an excuse when it comes to having the basic knowledge, and especially when you are sitting in the management. I would just like to remind all the audience to keep your questions ready. Please type that in the chat box. Also, from my experience as a governance professional, I would like to share the boardroom side of data privacy. So I believe that from the director's perspective, or generally from the senior management perspective, the directors need to, there are questions that we ask, but there are questions that we do not ask just because we think if we ask this question, it is going to lead to a lot of other questions. So for example, when we ask, if the directors are asking how we are dealing with different standards that may exist locally, regionally, or internationally. So the basic sub-question to that is they need to ask if our policies, our strategies, they are aligned together, so that whether there is a disparity, regionally or internationally or locally, if our data protection policy, if all these things are aligned, because like we just discussed, whether it should be, if the culture should start from the bottom or from the top, I think it has to come from all the sides. We cannot simply ask the directors to make a policy while we wait. All of the departments, of course, they do have a responsibility. I would like to use the word fiduciary responsibility. When you are an employee, you have the responsibility to advise your management too, because maybe the management does not have enough data, and maybe it is your responsibility to provide that data to the management. The management may not have asked that data from you, but maybe you have a responsibility to provide that data, which might affect their decision making. So the board needs to ask how effective your compliance processes are, and if they are currently meeting the current data privacy regulations. So when the management is asking that, the sub-question that the management is actually asking, do we have enough resources to allocate to all these compliance programs. Because we may like to ask these questions, we need this, we need that. But the question to ask is, are we willing to allocate resources? Do we have enough budgets? To just talk about the ideal world may not be enough, because ultimately, like I said, the directors, you will have the final responsibilities. So the directors also need to consider, just because they do not know much about it. In fact, rather, I think if you do not know much about it, why don't you make it a priority? That way you would definitely know about it. So when data becomes your priority, you need to ask yourself, okay, now we know this is our priority and we do not know what to do. So why don't we learn what type of policies and controls we need to put in place, because we may be collecting a lot of sensitive data. How do we align our goals with our policies? How do we reflect our policy? How do we reflect our strategy through our policies and procedures? So as a company secretary, I think there are a lot of policies, procedures, and controls that company secretaries can advise to the senior management. So for example, you can have policies on your personal data, collection of data, use of data, your security, your risk assessment, incident handling. Compliance is just another, full department. I can't even name how many compliance policies we have, even in the university. How do you do your complaint redressal? So another policy on that also. Your customer protection. So I think this is like a starters pack where you can begin if you do not know anything about how to comply with these requirements. Secondly, I think a lot of procedures need to be kind of devised in proper, through your intranet or your proper policies. It should be on encryption of data, what type of system you have to prevent data leakage, whether you are doing any internal or external reviews, if you have any policy on mandatory staff training, and how regularly that is, who is covered into that, who has the data, access to the data. Is there a chance that the people who are covered in the policy may not have access to specific or specialized training? Are we doing too generic, or is it, based on department wise? What type of tailor-made training do we need for different departments? Because I think these days all of us are handling data. For example, me, I handle a lot of student data, which 100% of which is personal data, their names and every detail about them. So we need to make sure that we as university, or any organization for that matter, what type of policy do you have? Who has access to this information? And of course, this access has to be strictly on need basis. And in fact, I would not even shy away from saying that if you really need access to some information, you may be required to ask for approvals for special request, which may be given to someone else for their approval. So this will also help you in your internal audit and external audit from that perspective also. Other thing you can do is you can have customer feedback channels through your hotlines, your emails, maybe your website, and any other type of program which will help you to build a rapport with your users, so that they are continuously informed of how their data is used, if at all you are storing their data. Again, from governance perspective, I think every organization needs to implement proper controls relating to the segregation of duties. Maybe there is one approver, there is one verifier, or maybe if your data is too complex or sensitive, maybe even adding some levels to that also, or keeping some type of audit trail to know who requested and why the request was, maybe backing it up with some proof. Then the other thing you can do is to have a dual control, not just as an approver and verifier, but also about extractor and destruction of data, because these days we need to be very careful how we destroy the data and how much we are retaining. Are we following the proper policies on retention of data? So for that, we can also do weekly, monthly briefing, maybe have another set of, if you're dealing with a lot of data, so maybe one person who is whole and sole, caretaker of the destruction part or the retention part. So for this, all of this, we will need proper stakeholders engagement, proper partnerships, also regular meetings with our regulators. How do they view, we might be, in future doing something new, and how we can brace up ourselves before the change is actually announced. How we can, watertight whatever we think is probably okay, but we could do more in that. Exploring newer ways to educate not just our employees, but our customers also. We could even, I see a lot of companies these days, they put videos on their website on how the customers, what type of things the customers need to know about their own data. So I think that could be another idea. Or again, I would like to reiterate, attending regular seminars like these would help people to spread more awareness. So, for example, if my mother, like last time I went to India and I went with my mother to a mall, outside those malls, a lot of people sitting with those stalls and they keep asking you about your personal data for some type of lottery. And my mother was very curious. And I said, no, they are just collecting your personal data. Why? What have you done to deserve this lottery? You have not even purchased a ticket. This is just, these are unethical means to get your data. So data literacy, people don't even understand until, like I said in the beginning, until I ask them, okay, give me your personal data so I can see, so I can misuse it. And then people realize, no, my personal data is important. So even educated people these days don't realize the importance of privacy and privacy as a right. So let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Audience, please, whatever questions you have, do not forget to type them in the chat box. Okay, so I would like to ask.
There's a question, Pooja, from the audience about the company secretaries working with MNCs. There's one question.
We have one question. We have the question for company secretaries working with MNC companies in India, and what additional qualifications or certifications or memberships will be required to be appointed as a data manager? So Priya, can you answer that?
No, I think obviously, of course, company secretary qualification is, I would say, very, very important and for the MNC companies. But I think it really depends. It's a very subjective question on what you're trying to, because this is more about a particular jurisdiction. I believe by data manager, you're talking about general data privacy compliance, similar to Fiona's role probably. And for that, typically what we have seen in the industry, that if you're more focused in the Asia Pacific region, you have the IIPP, Certified Information Privacy Professional Certification for Asia Pacific. There are some people, I'm sure I read Fiona's profile, who are also GDPR certified. I think that's really considered to be a gold standard. And then people go in for the specific regional certifications. So I think from a privacy point of view, what I have seen, IIPP certifications are typical, and I'm not endorsing IIPP at all, but I'm just saying that in the industry, generally, this is recognized as one of the highly regarded certifications if you were to go in for a privacy role.
Yeah, maybe that's another one that I would recommend, because unless it is compliance, always compliance related, because if as a data manager, there could be some other domain or data management domain knowledge area. So I would suggest CDMP, which is also the certificate that I have. And you can search DAMA, DAMA, which is the Data Management Association, which is a I think it was founded in, I don't know, 1980. Yeah, it's quite some time ago. Yeah.
Okay, so students, so get ready for more examination. Okay, so Lance, I would like to ask you if you can share your experiences on the typical challenges that we face when we implement the data strategy.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think some of the challenges related to execution of data strategy also covered in our remark speech already, and some of our and I would like to highlight like what I would like to echo Fiona on one part, yeah, which is related to the government-driven like kind of like strategy. Yeah, I also see the same problem, especially for I think for Hong Kong. I'm not sure if I can say this. I think especially for me, I've been working with the central bank, with the stock exchange, and a couple like public sector. We kind of like get used to receiving instruction or the top-down approach of doing things. But now I joined the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. So we are like public sector, but at the same time we have to drive the ecosystem. So we kind of like in the middle of like all the chaos. Yeah. So one of the things that we see is that in Hong Kong, I think that's in a couple ways. So first of all, when we talk to we want to, even top down, it can be a good approach to drive the data strategy. But however, you need to have a data champion. It has to start from the management. The data literacy has to start from the management, from the executive level. So what we're trying to like educate the executive, actually, we actually have some program. Yeah, we work with some of the training organization in Hong Kong. We provide some data training to the top management from the senior level, middle management level, and also the operation level. Yeah, so we have a different type of management, and also I think one of the topics or one of the suggestions that we provided to our top management deals of those training is that for the management, actually you can ask two questions. You want to be data literate. Yeah. So one question is, how do you know? Yeah. So when someone gives you a report, or then you can ask them, how do you know about this? Yeah. Then they have to give you some proof, right? And then you can follow up with another question, which is, show me the data. Yeah. So I think this just two questions. Actually, you can already generate some kind of thought, yeah, trying to like initiate this kind of like data culture, yeah, I mean rather quickly, yeah. But this is just one of the technique, but training is very important. Another is just within the organization, but another thing that from what we see is that we all, as maybe if you are from the banking, you also need to like listen to the central bank, or if you are in different industry, you have to listen to the relevant like authority to execute your data your strategy. But another thing in Hong Kong is that we also drive up a union as well. So let's say for the banking side in Hong Kong, of course we have to kind of like serve the central bank, the monetary authority in Hong Kong, but we actually work very closely to Hong Kong Association of Banks, which is the union of all the banks. Yeah, so they actually have their thought, have a say. There's something that they collectively have their idea, but they need someone, or they need some way to execute them. Maybe they alone cannot do anything because they are just a union. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to ask Priya. So, as you know, increasingly we are seeing governments moving to tighten data protection legislation and impose stiffer fines for data-related leaks. So, unfortunately, this has led to some governments in the region introducing data localization requirements in the last year. So, how can we best balance the twin needs of free cross-border data flows and privacy and security?
Yeah, thanks, Pooja. I think that's a great question. I think first and foremost, privacy and security are of utmost importance. And of course, having consistent privacy laws would help. For example, data breach reporting requirements, if they are consistent, it would help. Now, I think Fiona did mention that, we are also seeing increasing cyber attacks and security incidents and data breaches that are happening. Unfortunately, that is the reason that we are now seeing heightened activity. Now, how do we balance the twin needs? I think it's difficult to navigate and balance security. That is for the governments to decide. There are tensions there, but not contradiction in the approach. But importantly, purely from a telecom perspective, we've always had telecom sector specific regulations, right? Privacy, cybersecurity obligations to comply with. What we are seeing today is horizontal requirements being introduced for critical sectors. For example, Australia is coming up, is doing an amendment to its SOCI Act and introducing several requirements. What may be useful is to balance the compliance obligations to avoid duplicative requirements. And particularly in the context of data localization, I think it is important to understand that it is neither privacy or security, which is a discussion. It is regardless of where the data is stored, it should be in line with the international standards. And also, in the context of data, I think when we talk about data, we should talk about in the context of what kind of data are we talking about. It's not all types of data that is strategic or important, has of economic value. And despite benefits to the consumers, to the companies and economies that arise from this free flow of data, we know that these barriers are emerging. So I think the key for the policymakers, I would say, is to keep the innovation and investment momentum flowing, while at the same time minimizing regulation to instances where it is necessary, right? And avoiding regulation that skews market. For example, first and foremost, free data would underpin digital economy. It will play a great role in driving data innovation and growth, right? So it should be allowed. To properly balance the increasing data flows, we need to have innovative approaches. For example, as I mentioned earlier, we should have the ability to use flexible transfer mechanisms that are already compatible with existing data transfer mechanism. Without reinventing new rules, we should look at what existing frameworks are available to us. And one of the classic example is, we have under data transfer mechanisms already approved under the GDPR. So that could be a good way forward. And then policymakers generally should enhance strategic cooperation amongst themselves. We see a few examples of that coming, emerging in the Asia Pacific region, where, for example, APEC cross-border data transfer, CBPR rules have the governments are actually increasingly collaborating to ensure that data can be transferred across borders and boundaries. Last but not the least, I think generally overall we need to think about how do we promote innovation and investment without really being overly prescriptive. And the challenge for us, and I think this is not for us as an industry, but for the policymakers, is how do they balance these twin needs? I think the balance will lie somewhere in between. The equilibrium will, and there's no perfect equilibrium, but I think it will, as we go with the evolving nature of the regulations and the technology, which of course is marching ahead of us. I think it will, all of us, industry, government will have to work together on a collaborative approach to make sure that we do not stifle innovation. Thanks.
Thank you, Priya. Fiona, I would like to ask you, so how do businesses navigate the challenges of ambiguous or inconsistent guidance from regulators, particularly in privacy, data retention, and AI governance? Because I face this a lot whenever I'm talking about data privacy. Students always ask me, okay, so if I learn about data privacy ordinance in Hong Kong, will I be able to navigate my way through in Australia, or if I move to California, or if I move to this place? And I keep telling, no, data is central. However, the laws are not. So how you treat your data, how you use the procedures and controls, they may be defined and controlled or devised from different governments to different governments, different regulators. So how do we do that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pooja. It's just Particularly, like, so I alluded to it before, and Priya also talked about it, is that it's a very fragmented regulatory landscape. You know, that particularly in Australia right now, we have, you know, very different but key pieces of legislation that touches on privacy, data retention, and AI governance. Priya was talking about the SOCI Act before, which is Security of Critical Infrastructure, and how the concept of data sovereignty, data localization is in that piece of legislation. But then, like, that was it was considered and also then not adopted as one of the recommendations of the current Privacy Act reform. So you have this kind of piecemeal oh no, sorry, I don't want to call it piecemeal. I would call it a little bit of a siloed decision making, sort of the policy and the government level, when we're talking about across these different topics of privacy, cybersecurity, and AI governance. You know, since in Australia, since the Digital Platforms Inquiry, we've had a lot of that attention on the data protection laws here, and we're trying to really look at harmonizing it, but we're not there yet. You know, from the European level, you've got the European Data Protection Board really driving that harmonization across any of the new regulations like the AI Act and the Digital Services Act, really trying to emphasize the clarity, consistency with the privacy legislation, because you've got to consider privacy in your AI Act, you got to consider data protection and all of that. So the difference between the EU and the Australian experience is that the EU already has this uniform level of data protection. You know, you've got that gold standard, which is GDPR, rightly or wrongly, or how all the different member states have implemented it. You know, it's still, they're subscribing to this one level. But in Australia, there's legislation at every level of government, right? And different frameworks across them that kind of tackle the same thing. So I think in Australia we're trying to run before we learn to walk. You know, I think you've got, like, most recently I was just seeing that the Cybersecurity Task Force are looking at harmonizing data retention terms and obligations. Whereas how does that then work with the broader Privacy Act reforms that we're doing? How does the privacy safeguards of the consumer data right interact with the broader Privacy Act reforms? So there's so much ambiguity and a lot of sort of questions that haven't been really answered or looked at and considered. And whilst industry has been consulted on these, and they're asked to give practical scenarios where we can see where this would eventuate. It's just we can't predict and we can't foresee every single scenario, right? So I think it's been very difficult for businesses to try and sort of get through that maze and untangle all the different types of obligations, and then trying to weigh up which obligation should I, dedicate my time and my money to. Like, Pooja, you were saying that, how do you convince your directors and your executives to put money in this particular obligation to comply with this legislation, but not that one? Because at the same time, they're both something that you have to comply with. If you breach it, you got to pay the fine, you got to go to jail. So there's not a lot of guidance on that, even by the regulators themselves. So like it has been difficult, and I think it would definitely benefit from more of that cohesion and clarity from the regulators itself and what they want out of it.
Thank you, Fiona. In fact, I was just reading about it. Even if you look at the various, kind of criteria of GDPR fines. So, of course, the classic case always has to be Google's case. So, they have made so many mistakes. All of us can learn from them. But generally, I was just reading that they just don't fine you on an ad hoc basis, but they also consider things like what is the gravity of the situation, how many people were affected, what was the damage, how long it took to resolve, or what was the intention, whether the infringement was intentional or some type of negligence, maybe some employee mistake, or which was inadvertent, or what type of actions that the organization has taken to mitigate the risk or the damage, or and after that, what type of precautionary measures the company, the organization has taken in terms of, streamlining their policies, or how they have finally realized to be more compliant in terms of GDPR, or if they had any type of history in the previous years when there was similar type of mistake repeated, or if it is a new mistake at all. We are allowed to make new mistakes. So far, we don't repeat the old ones. That's what the regulators see. Another thing that the regulators see is that how the attitude of the management was when it was all about cooperating with the regulator, with the supervisory authority. And the other thing that they see is what type of the category of data, whether it was personal data and how sensitive that was. For example, if it is biometrics, there's no chance. Or did you really send the notification? How proactive you were? Whether you really followed the policies that you have in your files, and how do you prove that you actually followed those policies, and any other financial losses or benefits that you have made, using due to this type of breach. Okay, I would like to ask you, Lance. So what is the privacy risk associated with AI adoption?
Sorry, I dropped out earlier. Yeah, and somehow out of power, my laptop. Yeah, so talk about the privacy risk. I think we can look at like the process first. Yes, actually, yeah. I think in terms of privacy, I think because first of all, I'm not a privacy management professional. Yeah, I'm trying to get a certificate. It takes some time. Yeah, and I think, but I understand some of the principle. For example, like data minimization. Yeah, because when we collect the data, we have to minimize to its intended purpose, right? I assume. Yeah, but however, when we talk about like building a data AI model, building a large language model, we usually collect more than a lot of data before we know the real purpose. Yeah, so that actually violates the data minimization principle already because we don't know the purpose yet. So those are because right now I think a lot of a large language model they are like they're more of a general purpose. Yeah, so I will predict if let's say the AI Act or in the future there's more regulation related to AI, there will be more like purpose-based AI will come out, which is maybe something similar to AI agents that the people are talking about. Yeah, so this is one of the thing, the excessive data collection. Another thing is related to the explainability of the AI. Yeah, not only we don't know like what kind of data is being connected, we don't know how it can be used, we don't know who has access to it, and also if let's say I think Hong Kong we don't have this rule at this moment, for example, but let's say if I have to opt out, yeah, how will I do that? How can I do that? Yeah, I don't have any way to opt out from a large language model. Yeah, how can we reverse that? There's no way. So how will we govern that? That's a risk. Yeah, that actually violates some human right issue, I think. Yeah. So another thing is I think I also mentioned is the maybe perhaps the extended use of the data because of the model. We have a purpose. You can use it and then you can use it in this way, that could be already within the consent. But then if you repurpose it for another purpose, then whether it's within the consent, is it already violating the consent? No, no one knows. So I think that is there's some kind of issue that I would say we don't really have a solution at this a very clear solution at this moment. But because we actually have the rules. Yeah, I think in Hong Kong we have the PCPD. They issue some like I forgot, like ethical AI or some kind of like AI protection principle. I think it emphasized a lot in the assessment part. Yeah, so before we doing something, we have to plan it very well. So because if you don't plan it well, actually you it's very difficult for you to come back. Yeah, to fix the problem. So you have to fix it first. But in the future, I believe that there will be a lot of more like AI governance platform or some kind of I would say technology that could help to facilitate this kind of effort. Yeah, that I think that's necessary. I think, but another thing that when we think about it is another risk that we tackle is actually the cross border. Because I think we mentioned a couple of times about the cross border. But let's say if this data has been become a large language model and cross border, then I don't know. I don't know whether or not our current channel for cross border already can support this. For example, I think right now we are allowed to use standard, maybe some kind of agreement like standard cost to facilitate the cross border. And but however, if it becomes an AI model, how we govern that? So is there any way like certification that you can build a trust when we do the cross border? We don't have that. So there's quite a lot of different risks that perhaps there's even more, but I cannot think of immediately that we have to tackle. But actually for me, yes, this is a risk, but for me it's also an opportunities for the business. So for the company that govern their AI or their piracy very well, if they can receive some kind of recognition, I don't know, some kind of badge, some kind of award, then it could be a good marketing for those companies, give them some incentive to protect the data better. And also if there's company that specialize in privacy technology, like what I mentioned earlier, like privacy enhanced technology, like federated learning and other technology, they could benefit from this situation as well. So for me, it's both a risk, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for business. Yeah.
Okay. So since you mentioned about data minimization, I'm just thinking in the LLM. So I'm just thinking, is it possible, because I'm not from the technical background, is it possible to use data anonymization? Will that mitigate the risk?
Oh, it really depends on the use, how you're going to use it. Yes, I think when you talk about anonymization, I think pseudonymization is more like the masking the part of the data, right? I think that's more appropriate. But if you talk about like anonymization, then a lot of data will be removed. Yeah, because it's become aggregated data, then the use will also be limited. So it would really depends on the use case. Yeah.
Okay. And one more question: is there a specific governance framework, or is there any kind of principles to manage this type of privacy risk more effectively?
Actually, for Hong Kong, we have government, or we have digital policy office. They also issue an ethical AI framework. Yeah, actually introduce quite comprehensive procedure to govern how to develop the AI and also adopt the AI. Yeah, and I think for Hong Kong, I think it's when I saw the sources, actually it's from a lot of different sources, including Europe, US, and also China. Actually, I think early this year, we don't have that yet. Actually, I also work with Meta, from the Facebook, company, the Meta, to trying to draft out the ethical AI framework together. But however, when I see there's a lot of document or paper already come out, we stopped. Yeah, so we try to do the research on that. But I think so far, when I look at it, the Hong Kong, the ethical AI framework prepared by the Hong Kong DPO, the Digital Policy Office, is so far most comprehensive from my point of view. Yeah, and there's a lot of procedure SOP inside. Even for the assessment part, it separates some kind of like different kind of assessment, and some are like basically must have. You have to really get them all the green light with those 8 questions first before you can move down to do the next step. That's quite comprehensive. I think you can have a reference. Yeah, and the student can also have a look. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would definitely ask them. My last question to you. How do we build trust on the use of AI with our stakeholders? So, we are talking about this AI, which right now cannot even recognize you as a human. So your lights keep going down. So I'm just thinking, how do we do that?
Well, that can be a very it can be very I can use a couple beer to talk about these topics. Yeah. Yes. I think if in order to build trust, AI is actually like a child. You have to how do I trust a child? It's something like that. Yeah, because you have to give them the stuff because AI is still in the early stage. As I mentioned earlier, we still just using the public data for AI training more for the general purpose. Yes, they move very fast, but they cannot make decision for everyone. Yeah, so they cannot make very good decisions sometimes as well. Yeah, so how can we trust them? So in terms of data quality, maybe you cannot really fully rely on them. But based on and currently when we talk about the quality, just from quality point of view, actually we already have some AI governance platform start to come up. Yeah, so that's actually some technology to evaluate whether or not the accuracy of different AI models. Yeah, actually depends on whether it's a supervised learning or unsupervised learning. There's different technique to do so, but that could be put together in the same platform to help you to evaluate which is the best. So from the quality point of view, there's some I foresee there's more this kind of tools will come out about the data quality. Yeah, another thing is about the trust is the whether there's a human in the loop. Yeah, because it's not when we talk about trust, we don't just talk about the quality and how you do this, how you do that. We talk about accountability as well. The AI cannot be accountable for you. Someone needs to be accountable. Yeah. I hope someone can be accountable sometimes as well. Yeah, but sometimes not. So, but whether there's if there's someone in place to make the final decision or is responsible by somebody, yeah, it could be more trustworthy. Yeah. And I think the last part is definitely the transparency. How you can use the AI and what's the data source and who used it and who have the access to it. I think and this kind of case I think if this I think these are the 3 areas that I think you can help to build a trust. Yeah, otherwise you can only trust a trusted AI provider to help you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, that just reminds me, whenever I'm teaching thoughts to my students, I always give them this example that if I, as a teacher, bring a pet snake to the class and the snake goes out and bites one of the students, who should go to jail? So I always ask them, it should be the snake who should go to jail, not me, right? So exactly same way you said that AI, if we are using AI, some person, some body has to be responsible behind that. We cannot simply say AI is responsible for that. How about Priya? Can I use you to answer? Can I use your opinion on the same question? How do we build trust on the use of AI with our stakeholders?
Sure. I think in the interest of time, I know that we are getting closer to the top of the hour. I think some of the things that Lance mentioned and accountability, transparency, and these are the key areas that need to be kept in mind. Of course, there are many policymakers looking at ethical considerations, voluntary frameworks. For example, Singapore has issued voluntary frameworks around use of AI. In particular, around generative AI, there's a lot of discussion what kind of frameworks needs to be and considerations need to be kept in mind. But generally, I think as is with any new technology, I think it's all about how do you balance the need for more data with those of privacy and security of individuals? I think, Pooja, you mentioned initially that privacy is an inherent right of an individual. So I think the whole it's not a zero-sum game. It's all about how do you balance some of those policy and ethical considerations with the need of the society and the individuals to be more secure. So I know that we are on top of ours, so I'll just pause here with a brief answer.
Okay, thank you, Priya. Fiona, I would like to ask you. So the consumer data right was meant to enable open banking, but there have been criticisms of its government-led design. So what can we learn from this experience about creating much more effective data portability rights?
Well, I mean, I spoke a bit about that in my opening remarks, so I won't really repeat the criticism. It's just basically, Lance was talking about the top-down approach, and my observations was maybe a market-led approach would have been more effective. But I think from an industry perspective, and also from the results of the review that was done, and how basically less than 1% of Australians have taken this up, I think we are watching closely. We've sort of been burned before. I think it's making us think twice about implementing sort of the next thing that is sort of a government-led initiative. So, for example, there's the digital ID scheme that the government also wants us to get on board with, but once again, we're seeing there's a slightly different yet similar privacy regime as part of that. So I think what we learned from CDR is that we really need to justify the expense and the investment that we're putting into to comply with these government-led initiatives. So yeah, it's really made, I think, industry really think twice about it.
Okay, thank you. So Priya, since you are here, can I ask you another question? Okay, so recognizing the immense potential of data held by the private industry, where do you see the greatest opportunities of data partnerships between companies, governments, and relevant authorities to improve the public decision and policy making?
Yeah, I think, Pooja, it's a good idea in theory, in principle. But as we all know that, the data privacy frameworks differ for governments and industry. And so we need to build trust for all society, consumer, and businesses. And we have to ask ourselves, what type of data can we share? One example I can share from our experience is the data breach investigation report that we do every year for Verizon. And there we share a lot of data from a threat intelligence perspective. So our contributors are from all across the industry and the government sector. So I think it only depends on what kind of data is being shared. Sometimes reports like DBIR, they thrive on data that is contributed from members. So I think threat intelligence sharing for solving some of the cybersecurity challenges the world is facing today, I think would be a good example of data sharing and collaborating with the government and industry.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm?
Fiona, I have another question. So, how should businesses and regulators approach the ethical dilemmas around using compromised personal data, such as in the case of doxing? Could targeting techniques be used for positive outcomes instead?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think with every new data breach that we're seeing, there's a wealth of information that is now out there as public information, and not just for identity theft and crime, but marketing and targeting purposes, commercial reasons, that all that compromised data out there. And I think it was recently posed to me, like, what if we could use doxed information or compromised data from these data breaches to target and deprogram radicals or combat misinformation. Well, Lance is gone, but where he was talking about Meta and Facebook, create lookalike audiences on these social media platforms, and then target them with the different information. So I think it's an interesting ethical dilemma, and when it comes to that compromised data from data breaches, we have to ask ourselves, like, should businesses and regulators engage with this at all? Like, how do we ignore it? Do we ignore all that information out on the dark web? I think we're all taking a very conservative approach until there are actually test cases. I know on the New Zealand regulator side, they're particularly interested in regulating the use of that compromised data. But then with the very high profile Optus data breach in Australia, so with one of our largest telecommunication providers, was hacked, it really revealed a blind spot in our own privacy legislation. So in Australian privacy legislation, when Optus was hacked, Optus couldn't share that personal data or which customers were compromised in order to help fight identity theft or fraud, which is perpetuated through the use of that compromised data. So, of course, companies could go on the dark web themselves and find that information and then, protect their own customers. But by doing that, you would be obtaining it illegally, and that's also a minefield right there. So yeah, do you engage with it? Do you not engage with it? And I think with the first tranche of Privacy Act reforms, they're trying to address that issue that this Optus situation created. And then they're also penalizing the use of doxed information or doxing. So yeah, I think it's an interesting development that we're watching for now. But I think from a company standpoint or a business standpoint, definitely we're not engaging with the use of that compromised data because it does come with compliance issues there. It's the legality of the use of that is still question mark.
I still remember one of the students once told me about this website. I don't know if it is reliable or not, where it says if you put your details in that, it will tell you if your data has been compromised or not. So if you put your email ID, it will tell you whether, I don't know, I can't remember the website, but for example, if you put your email ID there, it will tell you, oh yeah, it was breached during, let's say,
it's I have been pawned .com. Yes, that is
the same one. So students, listeners, members, you can also check whether your data has ever been leaked using that website. I don't know if it is reliable or not, but just a suggestion to have fun.
I think it's become the de facto place to check. I know a lot of applications also you integrate with it. Even your Google Chrome browser does a bit of that check with it because it is sort of the single repository of a lot of that compromised data. So yeah, definitely use it, consult it, and see if your email address has been leaked in a data breach, unfortunately.
And in fact, I remember, so in Hong Kong, you basically use this card called Octopus card. So it is similar to so I don't know much about, so for example, in Mumbai or Delhi, maybe you have this card you use for metro. It's like a smart card. So in Hong Kong, we use Octopus card, with which you can, of course, use the public transport. You can also pay at the 7-Eleven. You can buy things from the money stored in that Octopus card. So basically, that is like it's like the lifeline of Hong Kong. Everyone has it. You cannot. If I go out and I forget my Octopus card inside, my day is going to be very difficult. So the very first data breach case happened during the use of Octopus, because a lot of people got it registered with their phone number and details, and Octopus, as the company, decided to share that information with whatever they're with the other beneficiaries or their other trade partners. And I was reading this case where it said that as a result of which the people whose data was shared had received 1.6 calls. So of course that was an average that they got, calls from advertisements or direct calling, direct marketing, and as a result of which Octopus was probably the first one to kind of get fined for this type of breach. And I was reading about GDPR because it came in 2018, if I remember correctly. And within the first year, the data was appalling. The data said that, I don't know, there was hardly any country which did not report data breaches. Because, when things are new, and especially things which have a mixture of law and data, it's so difficult how at law you might perceive data to be. Because as a different departments, probably, if you ask finance, what type of data are you holding? Maybe their definition of holding data is different from the data holding that legal department is doing, for example. So I think you really need to agree within your own organization as to the definition of data. And here we are talking about regulators and ordinances like GDPR. So from the top of my mind, I remember the case of British Airways, and that was in July 2019. They were fined $250 million at that time. And the authority said that they had failed to take adequate security measures to protect personal data. I also remember Marriott. They were also fined in 2019, and again, the same thing. They failed to take appropriate measures. And just imagine when you are talking about British Airways or Marriott, your credit card details, your name, your passport, your extreme sensitive data.
Absolutely.
So,
and
just
similarly
imagine.
with the Uber data breaches, it was like that too. Yeah, so absolutely, there's so much data out there, particularly what we're collecting and what we're using it for, and we're really being challenged on how we are processing it, and that could be what are we doing with all that data? So yeah, absolutely.
Another funny incident that I remember, I think it was last year or this year, I can't remember. There was this guy who was gaming online, some American guy who was gaming online with, I think there are some websites where you can game together with random people. So he was gaming there, and some random people joined in, and they said blah, blah, blah. And then he said, "You don't know me. I work for the US government, and I have all the I have all the, these confidential information that the US government has, and you don't know it." And everyone was like, "Oh, come on, stop bluffing. You don't work for the US government." He said, "Oh, you don't believe me? Wait." And he uploaded all the confidential information of the US government on the chat just to prove that he actually worked for the US government. So just imagine, we are talking about the government here who is questioning other people about their data and failing to protect its own data. And, that means this person on the same computer where he has that information stored, he also has the access to those websites or whatever app that he was using. So how is it possible, that you have the same thing on the same computer?
Absolutely. I think I'd like to think that government has moved on from that and has tightened its security, and not allowing to have that data stored locally on their hard drive. But yeah, like I think what I was talking about before is it's still the human element. You still need to educate and increase that awareness and the training in order for them to understand how they can use the data, and definitely not be uploading that into a chat, right? So I think hopefully we have come a long way, but I mean, still in my day-to-day, we are arguing what the definition of data is and what the definition of processing is. Like you said, finance doesn't think it has any data, legal, all the lawyers will argue, you know, left, right, and center as to what is the definition of data. And so, yeah, it's definitely one of the challenges of being a privacy professional is to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then, yeah, your company director might have a completely different concept of it, or no concept, you know, like we talked about, there's no data literacy at the top yet. So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge to really bring people along the journey.
Thank you for sharing your views. So I would like to thank all the speakers for giving their best, sharing their experiences. And I would also like to thank the ICSI team, especially Sonu Lakhani ji, who has been, working to make this a success. And a lot of admin work is involved, approvals and contacting a lot of people. So all of you who are attending this, don't forget to thank him. And in future, if you have any questions, you are always welcome to contact me, and I would be very happy to help you. Thank you very much one more time. Thank you, Fiona, and all of the speakers. And I hope we will be holding similar type of events in the future. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me. It's been wonderful. Really great discussion. Thank you, ICSI and Pooja. Great questions and great discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.